Today we're going to talk about time remapping, which is the process of adjusting the speed of clips in Adobe Premiere. The first thing you're going to want to do is import the footage that I currently have underneath Class Assets for time remapping. You'll need all 4 of these clips for what we're going to be talking about in the upcoming videos. Let's start by just dragging in this clip called Number 1, Ocean. We're going to start a new timeline using this. If we play it through, we see that it's a nice slowed down shot of an ocean. With time remapping, I can speed up this clip in order to make it look like it's running at real speed. To find time remapping, go ahead and click on your clip. And you'll notice underneath Effect Controls that we have this option called time remapping, and it's currently enabled to make keyframes. But right now, there isn't a way to actually alter the speed. Whereas everything else has a blue number, meaning we can change it, this one doesn't. I'm not really sure why Premiere doesn't allow us to automatically adjust time remapping, but for the time being we have to do a couple extra steps in order to activate our time remapping. To start with, go down into your timeline, and let's expand this clip both horizontally and vertically. I expand it horizontally by hitting the plus key, and vertically by hitting Command plus. When we look at this clip right now, you can see that there's a white line going across it. If I tried clicking on this line and raising it up or down, it'll change my opacity of my clip. What I need is for a line to appear on this that'll allow me to adjust my time remapping. And the way I do that is if you look in the upper left-hand corner of your clip, there's a little gray box with the letters FX written into it. Right-click directly on that box. If you right-click on the clip itself, you'll get a lot of options, but what we're looking for is when we click on this box, and we only get these 3 options for motion, opacity, and time remapping. Go down to time remapping and press speed. If you were paying attention, you'll notice that the line that had been for opacity has now dropped to the center of this clip. That's because this line is no longer about opacity, it is now about time remapping. This is why it was important that we expand our clip vertically so that we could actually see this line in place. Now in order to adjust our speed with time remapping, all we have to do is click on this line and drag it up or down. Dragging it up will speed up our clip. You can see that by the percentage numbers changing. You can see that once I hit 200%, that means the clip is now going twice as fast. If I drag it down, I'm slowing down the clip. I want to speed this clip up, so I'm going to drag upwards. And I'll start off at about 200%. You may have noticed that my clip just became shorter. The reason for this is now that I've sped up my clip, it just takes less time for it to play the whole way through. So let's go ahead and hit play at this now moving at twice the speed. This definitely looks closer to correct in comparison to how slow it was before, but this is still too slow for me. I think I might want to go up to 3 times the speed. Now there is a faster way to raise the speed in a more exact way than what I'm currently doing, because you may notice that as I'm raising upward, I'm having to go through each individual percentage. If I click on the line and hold down Shift, it'll raise by 5s instead, so now it's going directly from 135% to 140, 145, so on. I'll raise up to 300% this way. And now I'll play the clip through. This looks like a pretty natural speed for the ocean to be moving at, and I'm pretty happy with it overall. I'm going to go ahead and take my clip back to its original speed again. Now let's take a look at some of our options with time remapping. You may have noticed up in Effects Controls that I have the option to keyframe my time remapping. So if I wanted to, I could start this clip off at a faster speed and then have it drop down to this slow motion version of itself. I'll go ahead and go around the midway point, and I'll just drop a keyframe. Now since I want my clip to go from a normal speed down to this slow motion, all I have to do now that I have a keyframe in place here is click on the left-hand side of my keyframe and drag upward until I reach the speed that I want, which for me will be about 300%. So now watch what happens when I play through. It starts at a typical speed and then immediately drops down to slow motion. This looks pretty good, but I want this to be more of a gradual slowdown, so what I need to do is create a ramp. The way we do that, you can do it either from up in Effects Controls by manipulating the keyframe here, or down in your timeline itself, is if you look closely you may notice that this keyframe has what appears to be a serrated line going down the center of it. This means that our keyframe can actually be split into 2 parts. I'm going to go ahead and grab one side of my keyframe, and I'm going to just drag it over to the right. Now you may have noticed that I've created a ramp with it, so when I hit play, my clip slows down more gradually. Now with one of these keyframes selected, if I deselect it, this will disappear, so keep one of your keyframes selected. You may notice that there's a little blue icon in the center of my ramp. I'm going to expand my view even more so you can see a bit more clearly what this is. This icon is a little square with 2 circles on top and bottom of it. What I can do is I can grab one of the 2 circles and drag it over to the side and watch what happens to the ramp. Rather than being a linear drop off, it now curves, which allows my time remapping to smoothly slow down. The differences are subtle, but the curved version tends to make just for a slightly smoother deceleration, which is an effect that I personally like. So now that we've talked about speeding up an already slowed down clip, let's talk about slowing down a typical clip. I'm going to bring in this one called number 2 Forest, and I'll hit play on it. Now when I play this through, this clip looks like somebody walking through a forest at a pretty typical pace. It doesn't appear to be slowed down or sped up in any particular way. So let's go ahead and try slowing down this clip using the exact same tools that we just learned. I'll click on the clip, right-click on FX, go to time remapping, hit speed, and drop this new line. I'll drop it to about 25%, so it'll move at about a quarter of the speed. You may notice that my clip now just got considerably longer. That's because it now takes more time for us to actually get the full way through this clip. Now watch what happens when I hit play. Now you may notice that the clip looks extremely choppy. That's because this footage was not filmed in slow motion. Most films are done in either 24 frames per second or occasionally 30 frames per second. So right now, if we're taking footage that's naturally only 24 frames per second and asking it to move at a quarter of its original speed, we're now making it go 24 frames per every 4 seconds. So it looks very staticky when we try playing it through. This is why it's always a little bit tricky when you try slowing down footage that was not originally filmed in slow motion. Whereas with a slow motion shot, you can speed it up and not too much is going to happen. Now Premiere does offer us a pretty nice tool that helps us to clean up this speed issue a little bit when dealing with clips that aren't naturally in slow motion. Here's how we use it. Right-click on your clip itself and go to where it says Time Interpolation. Right now we're on frame sampling. This is typical to all the clips you'll be on. Now there are 2 other options here. One is called frame blending, and what's going to happen with this is that Premiere is going to try to actively blend our individual frames together. I'm going to go ahead and cut down my clip a little bit and just render this end section here, because this rendering can take a little while otherwise. And so you can now see that with the frame blend, it's causing a bit of a blur effect on our footage. This might not be exactly the effect that we're going for. So rather than use frame blending, I'm going to click on this one called Optical Flow. And you'll notice immediately that this one takes a little while longer than my previous render did. Optical Flow is a little bit newer to Premiere, but it's an extremely helpful tool that allows for a frame blend that's just a little bit more natural. Rather than trying to blur our frames together, Premiere is basically taking its best guess at filling in the individual frames that are now missing. So if we're supposed to be moving at 24 frames per second, and we've now stretched that 24 frames out across 4 seconds, it's going to be trying to fill in those individual 3 frames per second. So now when we've rendered and we're playing it through, you can see just how smoothly this optical flow actually works. Take a look at the water in particular. Earlier on, before we rendered it, it was moving extremely choppy, but now it actually looks very smooth. This optical flow effect does not always work, especially if you're dealing with people walking and things of that sort. It can sometimes cause some issues on the edges of frames, but when used on very short clips and on things that have a fairly smooth motion to it, it tends to work pretty well. In the next video, we're going to talk about reversing speed with time remapping.